Welcome to CBS News. I'm Robert Costa, the chief election and campaign correspondent. Joining us for a conversation is Congressman Jim Banks, Republican from Indiana. He is an ally of former President Donald Trump and a former chairman of the Republican Study Committee. He also serves in the U.S. Navy Reserves. And earlier this month, he announced he is running for the state's Republican nomination for U.S. Senate in Indiana in 2024. Congressman Banks, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to be with you.
Let's begin with Capitol Hill, Congressman. You are running for Senate, but still in the House. The House wants to play a role, the new House Republican majority, on the debt limit. Do you believe House Republicans and Speaker McCarthy will actually be able to enact spending cuts as part of a debt limit agreement?
Well, I hope so. That's the whole point of having a debt limit, to force the Congress to do what they otherwise aren't inclined to do. And that's show leadership to address the great fiscal issues of our time. At $32 trillion in growing national debt, we've hit the debt limit. We're months away from a default, and it sets up what I believe is an opportunity for House Republicans and our majority to negotiate with the Senate and the president to enact real budget and spending reforms that will send us down a path to address our debt and our deficit spending. So I haven't spoken directly with Speaker McCarthy in the last few days, but I know that he's thinking about real reforms that he can advocate for in those negotiations. And I'm one who hopes that we get something done.
But the Democrats, Congressman, control the Senate. President Biden, a Democrat in the White House. What kind of leverage do House conservatives like yourself have at this moment where the Republicans have such a narrow majority in the House?
Well, it's about the leverage of the House majority, which is one of three. So we have the House majority. We have a duty to use that majority that the American people gave us to address real spending reforms. I mean, the fiscal health of this country is a serious issue. It was an issue that was debated on the campaign trail last year, that the voters expected us to use the majority that they gave us to do something with it, to address these issues at this time. So the debt limit fight sets up an opportunity for us to have a serious conversation. And I hope that Democrats will come to the table. I hope President Biden will come to the table. I hope that Senate Leader Schumer and the Senate Democrats will come to the table with House Republicans and talk about what we can agree on. That's what a negotiation is all about. It hasn't appeared that the other side yet has been willing to take up Speaker McCarthy and his offer to sit down and have that conversation, but I hope it happens very soon.
Do you want Social Security and Medicare to be on the table as part of these negotiations?
No, I mean, I can speak on behalf of the vast majority of Republicans in the majority. I don't think that any of us want to touch Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid programs that seniors and others are relying on today, or who will soon rely on those programs. I mean, there's a adamant push, as much as I've ever seen in the Republican Party, not to touch those programs. We can make reforms in the future, well into the future, to sustain programs like Social Security for later generations, to save the program. I think those are areas where we can start. But the easy solution today is look at where we can cut wasteful spending. I mean, in the name of COVID, trillions of dollars were spent, some of it to address the pandemic. A lot of it had nothing to do with the pandemic, that bloated every single federal agency. There are many areas and opportunities to cut wasteful spending. And a wise political figure from my home state once said that you'll be surprised by how much government you'll never miss. And I think that would bear out to be true in this case. If we do what we were sent here to do and look at where we can cut wasteful spending, I think we can find lots of places to do it.
Many of my Democratic sources in the House, they say conservatives like Jim Banks can say whatever they want. At the end of the day, 5 to 10 House Republicans, more centrist House Republicans, are going to cross the line and band together with House Democrats to pass a clean extension. Is that how this all ends?
I hope not. I mean, I would find that to be highly irresponsible at this moment, to not use this opportunity to force Democrats to come to the table with Republicans and talk about serious ways that we can address a $32 trillion national debt. That's what I came to Congress to be a part of in the first place. I have 3 young daughters, their generation is going to bear the brunt of a $32 trillion and growing national debt. And if we just punt on it and we just pass a clean debt limit increase once again, then it just means that my daughter's generation, our kids and our grandkids, are going to see that $32 trillion national debt go to 40 to 50 trillion and beyond, and send this country off the fiscal cliff. There are serious reforms that I think Democrats I would hope, be willing to take a look at. I mean, lots of ideas that are on the table. Republican Study Committee that I was the chairman of last term. I mean, we proposed everything from simple rules changes to force the CBO to estimate inflation on spending bills. I mean, that's one serious idea that I would think that I think Democrats would be as interested in at a time such as this to go along with us. I mean, looking at reforms and bans on earmark spending. I mean, that's one area that I feel passionately about. Maybe many of my Republican colleagues don't, but there might be bipartisan support to address issues like that. I'm glad that in the recent rules package that Republicans passed, we now require a 2/3 majority to increase taxes. But what are some other rules changes that would set off budgetary reforms that would send us back in the right direction? That's what I'm talking about. That's where I would hope there would be bipartisan ideas, bipartisan support to do something to address a $32 trillion national debt.
And final thing quickly on this front, if there's no deal and default looms, what would you do? Are you willing to go into default to get a deal or not?
Well, nobody wants to go into a default, and the consequences of that would be disastrous for our country. Every single member of Congress is well aware of that, but the whole point of having a debt limit is to force us to come to the table to look for bipartisan solutions. And I'm most disappointed at the moment that my Democrat colleagues, especially in the Senate, and the president himself aren't willing to sit down and have that serious conversation with Speaker McCarthy to take a serious look at what we can do to address this big issue of our time. So the impetus, the responsibility is on them to come to the table and meet with Speaker McCarthy to talk about reforms. And so far, that hasn't happened.
Just a minute ago, as we're having this conversation, news broke. CNN is reporting that your fellow Hoosier, former Vice President Mike Pence, has found records marked as classified at his home in Indiana. What is your response to this latest revelation about former Vice President Pence from your state?
Well, I'll withhold judgment. We don't know anything about it. Mike Pence is a man of unmatched integrity. I'm sure that he did it. He did what he needed to do and informed the proper authorities about those documents. We've learned so much about this from the point at which the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago and President Trump's home in an unprecedented move, and how highly politicized that was, to the pattern of classified documents that were found at the Biden Center, at Joe Biden's home. So many questions raised by those processes. I'm sure we'll learn more about Vice President Pence's situation, but I know no man with higher integrity than Mike Pence, and I'm sure that he handled all of this in the proper way. I have no doubt.
The documents, according to CNN, were discovered by Pence's attorney. Does this give you any pause about continuing to the investigation in the House of President Biden and his documents? Should everyone take a moment to step back and look at this situation?
It gives me no pause at all. I mean, the situation with the Biden Center, the types of documents that were found, the Department of Justice involved in in what appears to be an investigation of some sort into the Biden family and the documents that they found at his home and in the Biden Center, which, by the way, is funded by tens and tens of millions of dollars from the Chinese Communist Party, our biggest adversary. So I don't know a lot about the documents that were found at Mike Pence's home, but it sounds like they were found by someone on his team and they alerted the proper authorities and handled it the right way. That's a lot different than the Department of Justice getting involved and finding the types of documents that they did at Joe Biden's home and at the Biden Center. So I'll withhold judgment further on Mike Pence's situation until we learn more. But again, I know no one. I've met no one in my life with greater integrity than Mike Pence, and I'm sure he's handled this with exactly how he should handle a situation like this. I have no doubt about it.
His lawyer discovered the documents last week, and then we believe, made it clear to authorities that he had these documents. House Republicans are investigating President Biden and his handling of classified materials. Should they now also investigate former Vice President Mike Pence?
Well, look, the situation that House Republicans are most concerned about is two different sets of how these situations are handled. I mean, when Donald Trump's home was raided by the FBI, that was a lot different than how the situation unfolded at Joe Biden's home and at the Biden Center. So I know Jamie Comer, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, is looking into that. Jim Jordan, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in the House, is looking into how did the DOJ apply two different sets of rules to how they investigated documents that were found at Donald Trump's home versus the situation at Joe Biden's home. Those are valid questions that should be answered. The situation with Mike Pence, as you've already said, it sounds like they found them, they alerted the authorities. I have no doubt that he's handling this situation exactly as he should.
Do you believe the former vice president should run for the Republican nomination in 2024?
I have a great deal of respect for Mike Pence. He has a great deal to add to the Republican Party. His leadership is important for our country. I don't know if he's running or not. I'll leave that decision up to him. We have not talked about it, but I have a lot of admiration for him. I served in the State House when he was governor of our great state. I've learned a lot from him. Again, he's a man of integrity, and we'll see what happens as we head into 2024.
Speaking of 2024, you are now running for U.S. Senate. Let me read you something from Politico's Adam Wren. He said, quote, "As red as it is, Indiana has shown favor to more pragmatic Republicans like Mitch Daniels, Governor Eric Holcomb, and Senator Todd Young, who has worked with Democrats in Congress." Where is Indiana these days, especially the Indiana Republican Party? Is it still the Mitch Daniels state, the Mike Pence type state, or is it more in the mold of former President Trump and Jim Banks?
Oh, I think those are unfair comparisons, Robert, to make. Indiana is a conservative state. Indiana deserves a conservative United States senator, and that's why I'm running, to be the same type of conservative leader for my entire state, my great state, as I've been for my corner of the state, Northeast Indiana, and the House of Representatives for the last 6 years going on and into my fourth term. I'm concerned about the direction of this country. I'm concerned about what I see, especially the lack of focus by our nation's leaders on China. In the House, a couple of weeks ago, we voted to create a select committee on China in the House, of which I'm a part of, that will do everything that we can to push this administration to do what it's not doing, to address the biggest existential threat, national security threat that America faces today in the Chinese Communist Party. We're not doing enough to address, obviously, as we've already talked about, $32 trillion national debt. We don't see the leadership across the board addressing wasteful spending that's sent us down this perilous and dangerous path of a $32 trillion national debt. So the national security issues are great. As an Afghanistan veteran, I'm well aware that our military has to do more to modernize and focus on the threats that we face and not become a tool for partisan or political, the political advancing of different ideologies, but to be focused on the warfighter and keeping America safe and strong. So those are the issues that I'm concerned about: the wide open border, the drug epidemic,
understood,
fentanyl, now the leading cause of death of Americans who are my age. That's what I'm focused on. That's what Hoosiers are focused on. They're looking for leaders, especially in the United States Senate, who will focus on addressing those issues, and that's why I'm running.
But for people who don't know you as well as I do, I've covered you in the House of Representatives. They might be trying to understand, who is Jim Banks in terms of the spectrum of Republican politics? And Mitch Daniels, the former governor, is eyeing this Senate race, the Republican primary Senate race. What makes you different, if at all, in political thinking from Governor Daniels? Just help us understand where you see yourself in that Republican spectrum compared to Mitch Daniels, who has been well known for more than a few decades.
Yeah, look, I respect Mitch Daniels. He's a nice man. I learned a lot from him when he was governor of our state. I don't know if he's running or not. I kicked off my campaign last week for now, I'm the first and only candidate in the race. And we'll answer questions like that and talk about differences down the road when we know if and who our opponents might be. But at the end of the day, the answer is very clear. I have a proven conservative track record in the House of Representatives. I've been the leader of the largest conservative caucus. And I'm one who believes, Robert, sincerely, that when we marry the party of Reagan with the party of President Trump, the traditional conservative platform of our party, the pro-family party, the party that's strong on national defense, and the party of fiscal responsibility with the party that understands that we should put America first in trade deals and immigration deals, secure the border, focus on the issues at home, then we're a bigger, stronger party. I mean, I talk all the time about my dad. He's a retired factory worker in Fort Wayne, Indiana, not a traditional Republican. He probably considered himself a Democrat most of his life. He's a Republican today because of President Trump, and we need voters like him in our party to win majorities, to win back the White House in 2024. So giving voice to working class voters around America, and especially in Indiana, where I serve, has been my mantra, my focus the last 6 going on 7 years in the Congress, and will be my focus when I get to the United States Senate.
You also are someone who is close to social conservatives in Washington, in Indiana. The Indiana Democratic Party issued a statement saying, quote, Jim Banks is 100% anti-choice with no exceptions. What's your position on abortion, and what's your response to that statement by Indiana Democrats about you?
Well, look, I'm unapologetically pro-life. I'll never back away from those principles. I believe that life begins at conception, and I celebrate the end of Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision that came down last year. What we've seen happen in America since is that the Democrats have taken the very radical position that abortion should be legal up to the point of birth. Last week, Republicans in the House passed the Born Alive Infant Protection Act to save babies who were born after a botched or failed abortion. That's the type of legislation that I'm proud that this House Republican majority has already passed, and bills like it that we might pass.
Would you push for a federal ban if you were elected to the Senate?
There are bills that I do support, bills that I've co-sponsored, like the heartbeat bill, that once a heartbeat is detected in a baby, that abortion would be banned after that. I do see it as the role of the federal government to perhaps set the floor, and states will debate. The Dobbs decision is all about allowing states like Indiana to debate laws at the state level. So Indiana was the first state to pass a pro-life bill after the Dobbs decision, and I celebrate that and applaud my friends and colleagues in the state legislature who acted quickly and passed the first pro-life bill after Dobbs in the country. What
about on the length of a ban? I just sat down with Kristi Noem, the governor of South Dakota. She supports a total ban with a minor exception. You look at some place like Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, the Republican governor, pushing for a 15-week ban. In Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis has signed into law a 15-week ban. Where does Jim Banks come down on where that line should be drawn?
Well, an important distinction, once again, because of the Dobbs decision that allows the governors who you are mentioning at their state level to pass strong pro-life bills, just like Indiana did, first in the country to do so. Like I said, I would prefer a bill that would ban abortions after a heartbeat is detected in a baby, that at that point that a baby can feel pain. I believe that, that it would be very, very reasonable for the Congress to pass a bill that would ban abortion at that point. That's why I've co-sponsored the heartbeat bill in the Congress, last Congress, and again this Congress too.
In the final few minutes here, let's turn to former President Trump. Do you want him to come to Indiana to campaign for you, and have you sought out his endorsement?
I spoke with President Trump prior to throwing my hat in the ring in the Senate race. Believe he did great things for our country, certainly did great things for the Republican Party. He's very popular in the state of Indiana. I'd be very happy to have his endorsement. And yes, if he comes to Indiana, we would enjoy having him out on the campaign stump to talk about the big issues of the day. So would be very pleased with that.
And just one other thing here about Mitch Daniels, Congressman. Dan Balls, my former colleague at the Washington Post, wrote a big column about your Senate race and the possibility of Mitch Daniels getting in. And so much of the tension is not just an ideological tension, though you haven't really touch that so much. It's a generational divide. You're obviously younger than Mitch Daniels. The Club for Growth, which has already endorsed you, has talked about the need for a new, younger generation of Republicans, including yourself, to rise. Do you see this 2024 race as a time for those in their 30s, 40s, and 50s to have a shot at the U.S. Senate?
I really do believe that we need a new generation of leaders to step up in this country. I've done that and have served in the House on the lower end of the age spectrum in the House of Representatives. When I get to the Senate, I will be among the younger members of the United States Senate as well. So it is important that members of my generation, of our generation, step up and serve to address the big issues of the day. And I hope I give voice to that generation too. But you know, at the end of the day, I believe Indiana is a very conservative state, deserves a conservative in the United States Senate. I believe it matters. That's why I feel called to run for it. Why I kicked off my campaign last week, even though it's we know it'll be a very long campaign. Lots of speculation about who else might get into the race, but at this point, I'm the only one in the race, and I'm glad to go out and make the case for why I'm best suited to serve Hoosiers in the Senate, and looking forward to the campaign ahead.
And is Daniels the old guard?
Look, I served in the State House when he was governor. I learned from him. I called him a couple of weeks ago to tell him I respect him, but I'm running for the United States Senate to be a part of a new generation of conservative leaders there who are fighting for America, fighting for our American way of life and for Hoosier values.
What did he say?
That's what I feel passionately about. We had a great conversation. And it was very cordial. He didn't discourage me. So I don't know if he's running or not. Lots of speculation. I know the Washington Post and other outlets are enjoying the speculation, but at this point, I don't know who else is running. And I'm glad and very grateful for the opportunity to go out and make the case for myself.
Congressman Jim Banks of Indiana, we really appreciate you stopping by. We'll be keeping a close eye on your Senate race and, of course, your work in the House of Representatives. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Have a good day.